The first thing Supreme Marshal Kaler noticed was the music. Not alarms. Not evacuation sirens. Not desperate military chatter flooding civilian frequencies. Music. Soft. Rhythmic. Human. It drifted calmly through the bridge speakers of the Dominion warship Ascendancy after one of the communication officers accidentally intercepted a local planetary broadcast. A child was singing somewhere below on the surface of the colony world designated Arinder Haven, while millions of civilians continued their daily routines beneath the shadow of the largest invasion fleet this quadrant of the galaxy had seen in nearly 2 centuries. Kaler stood motionless at the center of the command platform, 6 black eyes fixed on the blue-green planet rotating beneath them. 30,000 warships surrounded the world in perfect orbital formation. Heavy carriers, siege platforms, planet cracker escorts. Enough firepower to erase every city on the surface before the inhabitants could even understand they were under attack. And yet the humans were still broadcasting music. "They know we are here?" Kaler finally asked. The navigation overseer hesitated before responding. "Every communication network on the planet acknowledged our arrival 14 minutes ago, Supreme Marshal. Public awareness is confirmed." Kaler's armored fingers tightened behind his back. That made no sense. Across 50 conquered systems, every species reacted the same way when the Dominion arrived. Panic, riots, prayer transmissions, emergency military mobilization, civilian stampedes. Fear was predictable. Fear was rational. But Arinder Haven continued as if nothing had changed. Cargo traffic still moved between orbital elevators. Atmospheric transports crossed the skies in neat civilian lanes. Vast oceanic platforms continued harvesting energy from the planet's storms, while lights glittered peacefully across entire continents. No military fleet emerged to challenge them. No defense satellites armed themselves. No planetary shields activated. The colony looked defenseless, and somehow that disturbed him more than resistance would have. "Surface scans," Kaler ordered quietly. Thousands of holographic displays unfolded across the bridge. Cities appeared first. Towering white structures woven with greenery and flowing water systems. Human architecture always carried that strange obsession with harmony, as if they built civilizations to coexist with nature instead of dominating it. Then came the underground scans. Kaler narrowed his eyes. Beneath every city ran vast thermal grids extending kilometers deep into the planet's crust. At first glance, they resembled energy infrastructure, but their scale was impossible. Entire continental plates had been hollowed into geometric layers of machinery unlike anything Dominion engineers could identify. One of the science analysts swallowed nervously. "Supreme Marshal, these structures were hidden deliberately." "How?" "We do not know." The answer irritated him. Dominion sensors could map the atomic structure of moons from across solar systems. Concealing something on this scale should have been impossible. Yet somehow humanity had done exactly that. Then another transmission arrived. No encryption, no defensive coding, no threats. A single human woman appeared above the central projector wearing simple gray civilian clothing. Mid-30s, dark hair tied behind her head. Calm expression, no visible fear. Behind her, ordinary people walked peacefully through what appeared to be an open market filled with children, refugees, and civilians from at least a dozen species. She looked directly into the camera. "Supreme Marshal Kaler," she said softly, "on behalf of Arinder Haven, we acknowledge your claim of territorial annexation." Kaler waited for demands. Surrender negotiations. "Please." Instead, the woman glanced upward briefly, almost sympathetically. "You should leave orbit," she continued. "Immediately." Murmurs spread across the bridge. Kaler felt amusement rise in his chest. "And if we do not?" For the first time, something shifted in the woman's expression. Not anger, not fear, regret. "Then," she said quietly, "the planet will assume you are a threat." The transmission ended. Silence settled across the bridge. One of the junior officers laughed nervously. Another joined him. Within moments, several commanders were openly mocking the absurd warning. Kaler did not laugh. because at that exact moment, every ocean on Arinder Haven began heating simultaneously. Not gradually, instantly. Across the planet, trillions of tons of water rose by precisely 3 degrees in less than 2 seconds. And deep beneath the surface, something enormous moved. For 11 full minutes after the temperature shift, nobody aboard the Ascendancy spoke above a whisper. The bridge of the Dominion flagship had endured stellar collapses, planetary bombardments, and extinction campaigns without hesitation. Yet the silence spreading among Kaler's officers carried something dangerously unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. Confusion. The thermal surge made no tactical sense. Entire oceans did not change temperature uniformly. Not naturally. Not even advanced climate engines could alter planetary water systems with that kind of speed and precision. The Dominion science divisions had spent centuries mastering weather manipulation across conquered worlds, and even they required orbital arrays the size of cities to perform changes a fraction as efficient. But Arinder Haven had done it invisibly, without detectable energy discharge, without warning, and according to long-range scans, the planet's civilian population had not reacted at all. "Explain it," Kaler ordered. The senior systems analyst lowered his head carefully. "We cannot." That answer echoed through the bridge harder than any alarm. Kaler turned back toward the enormous viewing screen where the colony world rotated peacefully beneath them. White cloud systems drifted across vast oceans glowing gold beneath the system's star. From orbit, Arinder looked serene. Fragile, even. But now the illusion had cracked. "Military infrastructure?" Kaler asked. "Still undetected. Orbital defense systems? None visible. Fleet signatures? Nothing larger than civilian transport craft." Kaler's jaw tightened. Humanity had become famous across nearby sectors for abandoning expansionist warfare generations earlier. Historical intelligence described them as diplomats, engineers, and coalition builders. Strange creatures obsessed with coexistence and reconstruction. Entire species displaced by galactic conflicts had been granted sanctuary inside human territories. That was what Arinder Haven was supposed to be. A refugee world. A soft colony built by a species more interested in healing the galaxy than conquering it. Which made this increasingly impossible to explain. "Deploy atmospheric probes," Kaler said. "I want full-spectrum analysis from surface level to core depth." Hundreds of black reconnaissance drones launched from Dominion carriers and descended through the atmosphere in synchronized formations. Tactical displays updated instantly as the probes spread across continents, oceans, and mountain regions. At first, everything appeared normal. Human cities operated peacefully. Transportation networks remained active. Civilian broadcasts continued uninterrupted. Vast agricultural regions stretched across continents while energy towers harvested lightning from distant storms. No mobilization, no panic, no preparation for war. Then the first probe disappeared. No explosion, no signal loss. One moment it existed on the tactical grid. The next moment it simply vanished. A second later, 6 more disappeared over the Western Oceanic region. Bridge officers straightened immediately. Cause? No debris detected. Hostile interception? Unknown. Another cluster vanished near the northern polar zone. Then another beneath a mountain range running across the southern hemisphere. Kaler watched the tactical map darken piece by piece as probes vanished across the planet in seemingly random patterns. But it was not random. The disappearances formed geometric lines. A realization crept slowly across the bridge. Something beneath the planet was moving. "Magnify Sector 12, Kaler ordered sharply. The image expanded over one of the oceanic regions where dozens of probes had vanished. For several seconds nothing appeared unusual except rolling cloud cover above endless water. Then the clouds shifted, and the ocean beneath them moved. Not waves, the entire surface. A circular section nearly 40 kilometers wide rotated almost imperceptibly beneath the waterline before settling back into place. Several officers stepped backward instinctively. One analyst whispered, "That is not tectonic activity." Kaler felt something cold settle into his spine. The human woman's warning replayed in his mind. The planet will assume you are a threat. Not we, the planet. Before he could speak, communications officers intercepted a burst transmission originating from the colony surface. It appeared across every screen simultaneously. Not military encryption. Public broadcast. Human civilians calmly entering underground transit systems while soft orchestral music played overhead. Children carried bags and laughed with one another while automated announcements echoed through massive transit hubs. Synchronization phase beginning. A pleasant artificial voice announced. Estimated planetary alignment in 2 hours and 16 minutes. Please proceed to designated shelter sectors. No panic. No urgency. The humans behaved as though this had all been rehearsed countless times before. Kaler studied the footage carefully. Refugees from other species moved alongside humans without resistance. Nobody questioned the instructions. Nobody looked confused, which meant they knew exactly what was happening. How long have they been preparing for this? One of the commanders asked quietly. No one answered. Then another transmission arrived from deeper beneath the planet's crust. This one was encrypted differently. Not with human coding structures. Something older. The Dominion translation systems struggled for several seconds before partially reconstructing the message. Warning. Biospheric defense network activating. Foreign aggression threshold exceeded. Initiating awakening sequence. Across the bridge, every tactical display suddenly lit red. Not because weapons had appeared. Because the planet's internal heat signatures were rising. Every continent, every ocean trench, every mountain range, all at once. And somewhere beneath Arinder Haven's northern hemisphere, something the size of a city opened its eyes. The first official casualty of the invasion was not a warship. It was certainty. 3 hours earlier, Supreme Marshal Kaler had entered the Arinder system believing he understood the nature of power. The Dominion ruled nearly a quarter of the known spiral arm because they possessed the 3 things every civilization ultimately obeyed. Superior weapons, superior fleets, and superior fear. Now, standing aboard the Ascendancy, while an entire planet awakened beneath him, Kaler was beginning to suspect humanity had discovered something far more dangerous. The Dominion launched ground insertion operations 40 minutes after the biospheric warning appeared. Not because Kaler underestimated the threat anymore, but because he needed answers before uncertainty infected the fleet completely. Panic spread faster than plasma fire inside military hierarchies. Already his officers were exchanging glances they thought he could not see. Doubt. And doubt killed empires long before enemies ever did. 20 armored descent carriers pierced Arinder Haven's atmosphere under heavy escort and landed near one of the continent-sized thermal structures hidden beneath the southern hemisphere. The chosen landing zone had once appeared to be civilian territory filled with agricultural towers and refugee settlements. Now the entire region stood abandoned. No civilians. No resistance. Only silence. Helmet feeds streamed directly onto Kaler's command display as Dominion soldiers advanced through empty streets lined with white stone buildings covered in flowering vines. Doors remained open. Meals still sat untouched on tables inside homes and marketplaces. It looked less like an evacuation and more like the population had calmly stepped aside moments before the invasion arrived. Movement detected, one ground officer reported. The soldiers turned instantly toward a narrow side street. A child stood there watching them. Human. Female. Perhaps 8 years old. She held a small stuffed animal beneath one arm while studying the heavily armed Dominion soldiers with open curiosity. One of the troopers lowered his rifle slightly. "Where are your parents?" The child pointed downward. Then she asked a question that silenced the entire feed. "Did they warn you to leave?" Static crackled suddenly across the transmission. The soldier spun toward nearby rooftops as motion trackers exploded with signals. Hundreds. Thousands. Entire buildings pulsed with hidden movement beneath their foundations. Then everything stopped again. The child was gone. No footsteps. No retreat. Gone. What in the... The street beneath the soldiers moved. Kaler watched in disbelief as the white stone roadway rippled like liquid beneath armored boots. Entire sections of the city shifted position with impossible smoothness while buildings rotated silently around hidden central pivots. One Dominion soldier screamed as the ground opened beneath him and swallowed him whole before sealing shut instantly behind him. Weapons fire erupted immediately. Plasma rounds hammered nearby structures. Nothing happened. No debris. No damage. The buildings absorbed the impacts like water swallowing rain. "Retreat from the sector," Kaler ordered sharply. Too late. The city was changing. Massive structures unfolded from beneath streets and towers with mechanical precision, hidden beneath layers of biological material. Walls separated into moving segments. Roads bent into spirals. Entire districts reconfigured themselves around the invading force like a living maze. Then the forests arrived. At first the motion seemed like wind sweeping through distant trees. But the trees were moving against the wind. Entire forests advanced across the landscape in absolute silence, roots pulling free from the earth in coordinated waves, while metallic fibers glimmered beneath bark-like surfaces. Towering trunks bent toward Dominion soldiers with horrifying awareness. One officer whispered the words Kaler himself was struggling to accept. "The planet is alive." "No," another replied weakly. "Not alive. Engineered." A shrill alarm interrupted the ground feeds. Atmospheric contamination warnings flooded every Dominion helmet simultaneously. Nanoscopic entities detected. Unrecognized molecular activity. Kaler science divisions reacted instantly aboard the Ascendancy, magnifying atmospheric scans across the planet. And froze. The air itself was full of machines. Billions upon billions of microscopic constructs drifted invisibly through Irinder's atmosphere, woven so seamlessly into the environment they had remained undetected until activation. They flowed through jet streams and storm systems like synthetic pollen, responding instantly to changing conditions across the planet. "How long?" one analyst whispered, horrified. "How long would it take to build something like this?" Nobody answered because the number was incomprehensible. Meanwhile, the ground operation collapsed into chaos. Entire battalions vanished inside shifting terrain. Thermal signatures disappeared beneath forests that physically opened to consume armored vehicles whole. Mountainsides split apart into geometric trenches before resealing themselves moments later. And still there were no visible human soldiers. No armies. No defensive gunfire. The planet itself was doing the fighting. Then came the canyon incident. One Dominion unit fleeing the moving forest entered a massive ravine identified earlier as natural terrain. Helmet feeds showed exhausted soldiers regrouping inside the narrow passage while requesting emergency extraction. Then the walls moved inward, not collapsing, closing. The canyon had never been geological. It was mechanical. 23 Dominion soldiers disappeared as the ravine sealed shut around them with surgical precision. No bodies. No wreckage, no blood, only smooth black stone where the canyon had once existed. A transmission interrupted the chaos seconds later. The same human woman appeared calmly on Kaler's central display once more. Behind her, civilians continued moving through enormous underground transit tunnels illuminated by soft golden light. "You still do not understand," she said quietly. Kaler's voice hardened. "What is this planet?" For the first time, the woman hesitated, and somehow that hesitation felt worse than any threat. Then she answered, "Sanctuary." The transmission ended instantly. But before Kaler could respond, one final sensor report arrived from beneath Irinder Haven's crust. The object awakening under the northern hemisphere had started moving toward the surface. And according to Dominion scans, it was larger than the Ascendancy itself. By the 6th hour of the invasion, the Dominion no longer controlled the skies above Irinder Haven. Not because their fleet had been destroyed, because space itself around the planet had become unpredictable. Entire strike formations attempting orbital positioning suddenly drifted kilometers off course without explanation. Guidance systems contradicted one another. Gravity readings fluctuated in mathematically impossible ways. One destroyer reported falling upward relative to local space before vanishing briefly from every sensor network in the fleet. Then it reappeared nearly 3,000 kilometers away with half its hull fused into crystallized metal. No weapon discharge had been detected. No attack signatures. The ship had simply encountered physics that no longer behaved correctly. Supreme Marshal Kaler stood rigidly inside the Ascendancy's tactical chamber while reports flooded in from every layer of the operation. He had ordered 3 separate military analyses already, and each had reached the same impossible conclusion. Irinder Haven was adapting. Not strategically, biologically. The planet reacted to threats the way a living organism reacted to infection. Every Dominion assault changed the world itself. When plasma bombardments targeted coastal regions, the oceans responded by generating massive thermal distortions that bent energy beams away from population centers. When troop carriers attempted large-scale atmospheric entry, the planet created electromagnetic turbulence specifically calibrated to Dominion engine frequencies. The responses were too fast. No command structure could coordinate adaptation at that speed. No civilization should have been capable of processing battlefield evolution across an entire planet in real time. Yet humanity was doing exactly that. And still no human military forces had appeared. That fact unsettled Kaler more than anything else. "Casualty report," he demanded quietly. The bridge officer hesitated. "Ground losses continue increasing. 32% of deployed personnel are unaccounted for." "Unaccounted. We are recovering almost no bodies, Supreme Marshal." A cold silence spread across the chamber. Destroyed armies left remains. Wreckage. Biological residue. Evidence. Irinder left nothing. Kaler studied the planetary hologram rotating before him. Vast regions beneath the surface now pulsed with synchronized heat signatures resembling neural activity more than infrastructure. Entire continental systems communicated through energy pathways woven deep inside the crust. Then another transmission arrived. Not intercepted. Granted. The image expanded across the chamber. This time the human woman stood outdoors beneath a gray sky overlooking an enormous ocean. Wind moved gently through her dark hair while colossal waves rolled silently behind her. She looked exhausted now. Not frightened. Disappointed. "You should not have landed troops," she said softly. Kaler's voice sharpened immediately. "What are you?" The woman ignored the question. "When humanity first entered interstellar space, we believed every intelligent species would value peace the way we did. We thought diplomacy was enough." She glanced toward the horizon. It was not. The ocean behind her shifted. Kaler narrowed his eyes. The waves were organizing. Entire sections of water rose and folded into geometric patterns too precise to be natural. Kilometers of ocean surface transformed into vast symmetrical shapes pulsing with dim blue light beneath the waterline. After the first massacres, the woman continued quietly, "We realized something important. Civilizations build weapons because weapons can fail independently." She looked directly at him then. "So we stopped building weapons." The transmission changed suddenly. Dominion sensors across the bridge synchronized automatically with live planetary feeds. Mountains across Irinder Haven began unfolding. Not erupting. Opening. Massive sections of terrain separated along hidden fault lines revealing glowing structures buried beneath entire mountain ranges. Oceans split into enormous spirals exposing colossal rotating mechanisms deep below the planet's crust. Across the fleet, alarms exploded simultaneously. Gravity fluctuations intensifying. Electromagnetic distortions rising. Atmospheric pressure changing globally. The world was transforming. Kaler felt something ancient and instinctive tighten inside his chest. Predators recognized predators. And for the first time in centuries, he was no longer certain humanity was prey. The human woman spoke again. "We redesigned worlds instead." The transmission ended. At that exact moment, one of Dominion's orbital bombardment groups opened fire against the newly exposed structures beneath the northern mountains. It was a mistake. The planet answered immediately. Every ocean on Irinder Haven rose at once. Tidal walls thousands of meters high lifted silently into the atmosphere without obeying gravity. Water suspended itself across continents in impossible arches while storms formed instantly around them. Lightning began moving horizontally through the sky like living veins. Then the oceans attacked. Not as floods, as precision weapons. Entire pillars of compressed seawater launched upward into orbit with enough force to pierce warship armor. One Dominion cruiser vanished beneath the impact of a liquid strike traveling at hypersonic velocity. Another split apart when oceanic pressure waves crushed its shield systems inward. Bridge officers stared in horror as water destroyed spacecraft in vacuum. "That is impossible," someone whispered. "No," Kaler said quietly, unable to look away from the screens. "It is engineered." Then came the refugees. Emergency communications suddenly flooded Dominion frequencies from civilian shelters across the planet. Alien species from dozens of worlds appeared in fragmented transmissions, many openly weeping while evacuation systems moved them deeper underground. One elderly survivor from a species Kaler recognized immediately stared directly into the camera. "You should have listened." Kaler frowned. "Who are you?" "We were conquered by the Varric hegemony 71 years ago," the alien said weakly. "Humanity saved what remained of us." The refugee's expression darkened. "We saw what happened when someone attacked a human sanctuary world before." Silence filled the bridge. Kaler stepped forward slowly. "There was another world?" The alien hesitated, and in that hesitation, Kaler realized something truly horrifying. The refugees aboard Irinder Haven were not hiding from the Dominion. They were hiding behind humanity. Then the transmission cut abruptly as every tactical display aboard the Ascendancy turned blood red simultaneously. A massive object had emerged beneath Irinder's northern ocean. Initial size estimates failed 3 times before stabilizing. Diameter, 82 kilometers. Classification, unknown. And according to deep spectrum scans, the object contained biological components. The thing rising beneath Irinder Haven's northern ocean was not a machine. That realization spread through the Dominion fleet slowly at first, resisted by officers and analysts whose entire understanding of warfare depended on the assumption that technology and biology remained separate. Even after deep spectrum scans confirmed living tissue woven through metallic superstructures, many aboard the Ascendancy insisted the readings had to be corrupted by the planet's interference fields. Kaler did not make that mistake. He had spent 40 years conquering civilizations across hostile sectors of the galaxy. He understood instinct, adaptation, predatory intelligence. And whatever was surfacing beneath that ocean was intelligent. The water split apart in absolute silence. No tidal explosion followed. No violent eruption. Trillions of tons of seawater simply folded outward as though reality itself had parted gently around the ascending structure. Clouds above the northern hemisphere rotated into vast spirals while electrical storms circled the emergence zone like living guardians. Then the object breached the surface. Across the fleet, thousands of Dominion personnel stopped breathing simultaneously. The structure resembled neither warship nor organism completely. It rose from the depths like a continent-sized spine formed from black metallic bone interwoven with glowing biological tissue. Enormous luminous veins pulsed beneath layered armor plates while sections of its surface opened and closed rhythmically like breathing gills. And at the center of the structure, an eye opened, not metaphorically, an actual eye, larger than Dominion carriers. It emerged slowly from beneath armored layers and turned upward toward orbit with terrifying awareness. Golden light flooded across the northern hemisphere as the massive pupil contracted directly toward the invasion fleet. Several officers physically recoiled from the tactical display. One collapsed outright. Kaler felt something he had not experienced since childhood crawl up his spine. The ancient terror prey felt when something larger noticed them. "Energy readings spiking," shouted a systems controller. The eye was scanning them. Every warship in orbit lit up with invasive sensor sweeps unlike anything Dominion science recognized. Shield frequencies, neural communication patterns, engine harmonics, weapons calibration, even biological signatures from individual crew members were analyzed instantly. The thing understood them within seconds. Then it spoke. Not through language, through the fleet itself. Every screen aboard every Dominion vessel flickered simultaneously as a single message appeared across all systems regardless of encryption level. Threat confirmed. Defensive evolution continuing. Several ships lost power immediately afterward. Not attacked. Rewritten. Entire operating systems transformed into incomprehensible organic code before Dominion engineers could isolate the corruption. Automated defense turrets turned against friendly vessels. Navigation systems began rerouting ships toward Erinder's atmosphere without authorization. The planet was infecting their technology. Kaler's military instincts screamed at him to retreat immediately. But another instinct overrode it. He needed to understand what humanity had become. Trace the origin of the biological structure, he ordered. Already attempting, replied the chief analyst, visibly shaken. The tissue composition does not match any known species. Then the analyst froze. His face lost color. Supreme Marshal, we found something else. A hidden data archive had activated beneath one of the abandoned human cities after Dominion troops breached the region. Most of the files were corrupted intentionally, but fragments survived long enough for translation systems to reconstruct portions of the records. Kaler stepped toward the display. The first recovered phrase changed everything. Phase 1 Sanctuary Prototype successful. Prototype, not fortress, not capital world. Prototype. Kaler stared at the words in silence. Another fragment appeared beneath it. Aggressor species demonstrated predictable escalation patterns. Live combat testing continues. Several officers looked at one another uneasily. Testing? Someone whispered. More fragments surfaced. Biospheric adaptation rate exceeding expectations. Planetary consciousness stability maintained. Hostile fleet providing valuable evolutionary data. The tactical chamber went completely silent. Kaler read the final translated line twice before speaking. This invasion. His voice lowered dangerously. They wanted this. No one argued, because suddenly everything made horrible sense. The hidden infrastructure, the defenseless appearance, the calm civilians, the refusal to evacuate the system entirely. Humanity had not been caught unprepared. Humanity had baited predators. The realization spread across the bridge like poison. Erinder Haven was not merely surviving the invasion. It was learning from it. Then the planet evolved again. Entire mountain ranges shifted position across the southern continent, while oceans separated into rotating geometric spirals stretching thousands of kilometers wide. Atmospheric storms condensed into organized formations moving with military precision. And beneath the crust, more heat signatures awakened. Not one planetary intelligence. Multiple. Kaler stepped toward the command platform sharply. Recall all remaining ground forces immediately. Supreme Marshal, the communications officer said weakly. We cannot. Explain. The officer swallowed hard. The planet is no longer permitting extraction routes. As if to confirm the statement, live battlefield feeds erupted across the chamber. Dominion soldiers attempting evacuation watched the landscape physically close around them. Forests fused together into towering walls of black vegetation threaded with metallic fibers. Entire valleys folded shut while rivers changed direction instantly to isolate troop formations. One battalion commander screamed into the feed as the horizon itself began moving toward his position. Not an army. The horizon. Then the transmission ended in static. Kaler felt control slipping for the first time in his military career. Not tactical control. Conceptual control. Everything about this conflict violated the foundations of interstellar warfare. Humanity was not defending territory conventionally because humanity no longer viewed planets as territory. They viewed planets as extensions of themselves. Then came the final blow. Long-range hyperspace monitors detected Dominion reinforcements entering the edge of the Erinder system. Relief spread briefly across the bridge, until the reinforcements vanished. No battle. No distress signals. The fleet simply disappeared upon entering system boundaries. Every sensor in the Ascendancy searched desperately for debris or warp signatures. Nothing. 1 second the reinforcements existed. The next second they were gone. The massive eye beneath Arinder's ocean slowly turned upward again. And this time, it smiled. The smile broke something inside the Dominion fleet. Not morale. Not discipline. Those still held barely through fear and rigid training. What shattered was the assumption that this war remained understandable. War required rules, cause and effect, action and response. But Arinder Haven behaved less like a battlefield and more like an intelligence experiment conducted by something so far beyond conventional strategy that the Dominion could no longer predict even basic outcomes. And still the planet continued evolving. Supreme Marshal Kaler stood unmoving at the center of the ascendancy, while emergency alerts flashed across every tactical layer surrounding him. Entire strike groups had begun reporting contradictory laws of motion near the planet's upper atmosphere. One cruiser accelerating away from Arinder somehow found itself descending toward the surface instead. Another vessel launched interceptor drones that aged decades within seconds before disintegrating into dust. Reality around the colony was becoming unstable. Or worse, controlled. "Prepare emergency warp withdrawal," Kaler ordered. The bridge crew moved instantly, grateful for a command that still sounded familiar. Engines across the Dominion fleet began charging for coordinated hyperspace escape while navigational systems calculated exit vectors beyond the distorted gravity field surrounding the system. For one brief moment, order returned. Then the engines failed. Not malfunctioned, refused. Thousands of warships transmitted simultaneous fault reports as their drive cores shut down autonomously. Power remained active. Fuel systems functioned normally. Yet every hyperspace engine in orbit entered complete mechanical paralysis. The fleet could no longer leave. A communications officer suddenly gasped. "Incoming transmission." Kaler looked up sharply. The human woman appeared again, though this time the image quality flickered strangely, as if the transmission itself existed partially outside conventional space. Behind her stretched a vast chamber unlike anything previously seen on Arinder. Towering black structures pulsed slowly beneath layers of living tissue, while rivers of glowing energy flowed through the walls like blood vessels. The room was breathing. "You waited too long," she said quietly. Kaler stepped toward the display. "Release my fleet. You were warned before planetary escalation began. You trapped us." "No," the woman replied softly. "Earlier, departure remained statistically viable. Now the system has classified your fleet as an active extinction-level threat." Kaler's voice hardened. "System." For the first time, the woman looked genuinely tired. "You still think Arinder belongs to humanity?" Her eyes lifted slightly toward something unseen above her. "That misunderstanding is why invasions always fail here." The transmission ended abruptly. At that exact moment, one of the Dominion carriers screamed. Not metaphorically. Its entire hull emitted a low-frequency resonance audible through open communication channels as black organic growths erupted across the ship's surface. Metallic armor split apart while veins of glowing tissue spread through internal corridors faster than containment teams could respond. "It's inside the ship," someone shouted through the feed. Crew members fired plasma weapons at the spreading growths, but the organism absorbed the energy harmlessly and expanded faster. Entire sections of the carrier began reshaping internally. Walls curved, floors softened. Navigation systems rewrote themselves into incomprehensible biological patterns. Then the carrier transmitted a signal. Not Dominion encryption, not human communication, a pulse. Every infected system aboard nearby ships immediately responded. Kaler watched in horror as the corruption spread fleet-wide through communication frequencies themselves. The planet was using information as biology. "Cut all network connections," Kaler roared. Too late. Dozens of vessels already displayed signs of infection. Organic circuitry spread beneath command consoles while support systems merged with living tissue. In several ships, crew members reported hearing whispers through internal communications spoken in voices identical to their own. Then came the assimilation. One infected destroyer abruptly altered course and accelerated directly toward Arinder's atmosphere. Defense systems from nearby Dominion ships opened fire instantly, but the destroyer's shields adapted mid-impact, shifting frequency faster than targeting computers could compensate. The vessel reached the atmosphere intact, and the planet absorbed it. The surface opened beneath the descending warship like liquid receiving rain. Metal disappeared beneath oceans of black geometric matter, while enormous energy pulses spread across continents moments later. The destroyer's weapons technology appeared inside planetary systems 37 seconds afterward. Arinder was reverse engineering the fleet in real time. Panic finally erupted across the Ascendancy. Not among soldiers. Among scientists. Supreme Marshal, the chief analyst, whispered hoarsely. This is not defensive adaptation anymore. Kaler already understood. The planet was accelerating. Every attack, every transmission, every failed tactic, all of it fed the world below. Then new signals appeared beyond Arinder's orbit. Refugee vessels. Hundreds of them emerging from hidden shelters across nearby moons and asteroid fields. Ships belonging to species displaced by galactic wars drifted cautiously into open space while broadcasting emergency appeals directly toward the Dominion fleet. At first Kaler assumed they were attempting escape. Then the translations arrived. Please surrender. Do not force final escalation. You do not understand what humanity becomes during war. One transmission came from an elderly refugee whose species Kaler recognized immediately from old conquest archives. Their civilization had once possessed one of the strongest military coalitions in nearby sectors before mysteriously abandoning all expansion and vanishing into protected human territory decades earlier. The old alien stared into the camera with visible terror. We thought humans were peaceful because they hated violence, he said weakly. We were wrong. Kaler felt ice settle into his chest. What are they? The refugee hesitated, then answered with the kind of fear that only came from memory. They are survivors. Before Kaler could respond, every light aboard the Ascendancy dimmed simultaneously. The planet below had begun pulling energy directly from the fleet. Not through beams or siphons, through space itself. And far beneath the Arinder Haven's crust, something unimaginably vast finally woke completely. When the thing beneath Arinder Haven awakened fully, the stars disappeared. Not physically. The Dominion fleet could still detect them beyond the system. Sensors confirmed celestial positions remained unchanged. Yet every viewport aboard every surviving warship suddenly showed only darkness surrounding the planet, as though space itself had closed around the battlefield like a giant hand. Then came the heartbeat. Slow, massive, felt through hull plating instead of heard. Each pulse rolled through the fleet with enough force to distort gravity readings across thousands of kilometers. Crew members collapsed as internal organs vibrated painfully inside their bodies. Several smaller ships lost structural integrity entirely, crumpling inward as invisible pressure waves swept outward from the planet below. Kaler gripped the tactical platform tightly while warning sirens drowned beneath the rhythmic pulse now echoing through the Ascendancy. The planet had a heartbeat. That thought should have sounded absurd. Instead, it felt horrifyingly logical. Visual feed from the surface, he ordered. The holographic displays obeyed instantly, and for the first time since entering the system, Kaler truly understood why every refugee species aboard Arinder had looked at humanity with equal parts gratitude and fear. The world below was no longer pretending to be a colony. Entire continents had unfolded into structures beyond conventional architecture. Mountains separated into colossal black towers, reaching through cloud layers, while oceans rotated around geometric energy formations large enough to alter planetary weather patterns. Storm systems no longer moved naturally. They circled the globe in synchronized spirals like defensive satellites made from lightning and atmosphere. And everywhere, eyes, thousands of them opening across the planet's surface. Within oceans, inside mountain ranges, beneath forests, some biological, some mechanical, some impossible to classify, all watching the fleet. Kaler felt his instincts screaming now. Not military instinct, something older, something buried deep inside predatory species across the galaxy. The instinct that recognized apex intelligence. A transmission suddenly forced itself across every surviving Dominion communication channel. Not the woman this time. A man appeared, Old, human, white-haired, calm. He stood inside an immense chamber where entire walls seemed grown rather than constructed. Vast streams of glowing data flowed beneath transparent floors while organic machinery pulsed around him like the inside of some colossal living organism. Kaler immediately understood. This human was important. "My name is Elias Mercer," the old man said quietly, "Chief Architect of the Sanctuary Initiative." Kaler's voice hardened. "What have you done to this world?" The old human regarded him silently for several seconds before answering. "What we had to." The chamber behind him shifted subtly as if responding to his emotional state. Mercer continued. 311 years ago, humanity made first contact with another interstellar civilization. We believed what every young species believes, that intelligence naturally creates wisdom, that advanced civilizations outgrow conquest. His expression darkened slightly. We were wrong. New images appeared behind him. Burning worlds. Human cities collapsing beneath orbital bombardment. Billions dead beneath alien skies. Kaler felt the bridge grow silent around him. "The first species we encountered tried to erase us within 8 months," Mercer said calmly. "The second enslaved entire colonies. The third sterilized human worlds from orbit because they considered our biology economically inefficient." The old man stepped forward slowly. So humanity adapted. The heartbeat beneath Arinder intensified. Kaler noticed something then. The chamber Mercer stood inside was moving slightly. Breathing. "Most civilizations build stronger weapons after surviving extinction attempts," Mercer continued. "But weapons can be destroyed. Fleets can be outnumbered. Defensive systems eventually fail." His eyes lifted directly toward the camera. "So we asked a different question." Kaler suddenly did not want to hear the answer. What if worlds could defend themselves? Silence followed. Not dramatic silence. The kind that arrives when truth finally explains every impossible thing at once. Kaler understood now. Humanity had not merely engineered planets. Humanity had engineered survivors. Arinder Haven was not infrastructure. It was an organism designed for war. The old man spoke again. "Every human sanctuary world begins dormant, peaceful, open, vulnerable by appearance. We welcome refugees, traders, diplomats." His expression hardened slightly. "And predators." The tactical displays aboard the Ascendancy erupted suddenly. Massive structures hidden inside Arinder's moons were activating. The moons cracked open. Kaler stared upward as entire lunar surfaces separated into gigantic layered mechanisms glowing with impossible energy signatures. Vast rings unfolded from beneath the crusts while gravitational distortions spread through local space hard enough to bend light itself. Weapons. Planet-killing weapons. No, something worse. The old human continued speaking while the fleet around Kaler descended further into panic. After the Fall Wars, humanity reached one conclusion above all others. Mercer's voice lowered quietly. No human world will ever fall again. The heartbeat struck harder. Several Dominion ships simply vanished from tactical displays entirely. Not destroyed. Gone. Space folded around them like paper collapsing inward before sealing shut instantly afterward. Kaler felt fear now. True fear. Not for himself. For the Dominion. Because suddenly he understood something catastrophic. Arinder Haven was only one sanctuary world. "How many?" he whispered before stopping himself. Mercer heard anyway, and smiled sadly. "That," the old human replied, "is exactly the question the galaxy is about to start asking." Then every eye across the planet opened fully, and the final defense phase began. The final defense phase did not begin with an explosion. It began with silence. Across the Arinder system, every sound vanished simultaneously. Engine vibrations disappeared. Alarm sirens died mid-cycle. Even internal communications aboard Dominion warships collapsed into absolute stillness as if space itself had muted reality. Then the stars moved. Kaler watched in frozen disbelief as the entire battlefield bent inward around Arinder Haven. Not visually, physically. The fabric of space twisted like liquid glass while gravity lost all consistent direction. Entire fleets drifted sideways relative to themselves. Massive carriers folded into impossible angles without breaking apart immediately, trapped between conflicting laws of motion. The sanctuary world below had stopped defending itself. Now it was reshaping the environment around the enemy. And the terrifying part was how controlled it all felt. No chaos. No uncontrolled devastation. Everything happened with surgical precision. The moons orbiting Erinder ignited first. The colossal structures hidden beneath their crusts unfolded completely, revealing enormous rings of black matter rotating around compressed spheres of artificial gravity. Light itself bent around the constructs while streams of energy connected moon to planet in glowing lines visible across millions of kilometers. Then the atmosphere changed. Cloud systems descended downward instead of upward. Storms condensed into vast rotating formations around Dominion vessels, surrounding them inside electromagnetic prisons that disrupted shields, weapons, and neural interfaces simultaneously. Entire warships lost function without suffering visible damage. They were simply denied operation. Kaler gripped the tactical platform while the Ascendancy struggled against forces his science divisions could no longer explain. Dominion targeting systems displayed impossible readings across every sensor layer. Matter instability, localized dimensional collapse, biological infiltration spreading through non-organic materials. The fleet was not losing a battle anymore. It was being unmade. Then Erinder itself rose. Massive sections of the planet's surface separated into enormous geometric structures ascending slowly into orbit. Oceans climbed skyward in spiraling pillars while mountain-sized formations unfolded from beneath continents like the opening limbs of some planetary god. The sanctuary world had become something else entirely. Something alive enough to leave the ground. Kaler finally understood the scale of humanity's ambition. They had not weaponized planets. They had erased the distinction between civilization and weapon completely. A final transmission appeared across the Ascendancy's bridge. Not forced. Permitted. Elias Mercer stood once more inside the living chamber deep beneath Erinder Haven. Behind him, enormous biological structures pulsed softly with planetary rhythm, while streams of information flowed like rivers through the walls. His expression carried no triumph, only exhaustion. "You still think this is about dominance," the old human said quietly. "That is why your empire cannot understand us." Kaler stared at him. "Then what are you?" Mercer was silent for a moment. Then he answered with absolute certainty. "Alive." At that instant, the final sequence activated. The space surrounding the Dominion fleet bloomed with luminous fractures stretching across the battlefield like cracks spreading through glass. Ships caught inside them did not explode. They dissolved into streams of particles before being absorbed into vast geometric fields surrounding the planet. Matter converted. Energy redistributed. Nothing wasted. The Ascendancy trembled violently as entire sections of its hull transformed into inert crystal beneath waves of cascading molecular alteration. Crew members screamed as gravity reversed inside collapsing corridors. Weapons systems liquefied into harmless metallic sand before they could fire. Yet through all of it, Erinder never struck blindly. Civilian evacuation corridors remained untouched. Refugee vessels drifted safely beyond the distortion fields. Even damaged Dominion escape craft attempting surrender were carefully redirected away from the destruction. Humanity was demonstrating something far more terrifying than rage. Control. One by one, the surviving Dominion warships disappeared. Some folded into miniature singularities before dissolving silently. Others were consumed by dimensional fractures that sealed immediately afterward. Several simply ceased existing altogether, erased so completely that even debris fields failed to remain. The great invasion fleet that had conquered hundreds of worlds vanished in less than 2 minutes. 30,000 warships reduced to silence. And at the center of the collapsing battlefield, the Ascendancy remained alone. Kaler stood motionless as the stars slowly returned around him. The darkness surrounding Erinder faded while the sanctuary world descended gradually back toward its original form. Oceans lowered. Mountains resealed. Storm systems dispersed into gentle cloud layers once more. The transformation reversed itself calmly, as if the apocalypse had merely been an unpleasant interruption. A final communication appeared before the Ascendancy's failing systems. Not from Mercer. From the dark-haired woman who had warned him at the beginning. Her expression remained sad. "We did not become monsters, Supreme Marshal," she said softly. Behind her, children once again walked through peaceful streets, while refugee transports returned carefully toward restored cities. "We became impossible to kill." The transmission ended. Moments later, the Ascendancy lost power completely. Kaler stood in darkness watching Erinder Haven rotate peacefully beneath him, looking once more like a harmless sanctuary world filled with civilians, gardens, and open skies. Anyone arriving tomorrow would never believe what had happened here. And that was the most horrifying realization of all. Because somewhere beyond the stars, humanity possessed more worlds like this. Sleeping worlds. Waiting worlds. Worlds pretending to be peaceful until violence forced them to wake. Across the galaxy, intercepted recordings of the battle began spreading faster than governments could suppress them. Empires halted invasions mid-campaign. Military coalitions recalled expansion fleets overnight. Entire civilizations updated star charts with new exclusion zones surrounding human territory. Not because humanity threatened conquest. Because humanity had demonstrated something much worse. A species that survived extinction by engineering entire worlds into living guardians. And somewhere far beyond Erinder Haven, hidden beneath oceans older than human civilization itself, Earth remained asleep,